Hey y'all, come on in. Good to see you guys. I just finished watching this series and so I'm here to trauma dump about it. Oh, hi Thomas. Hey y'all, I've been getting a lot of requests to watch this and talk about it, so here we are. I just finished it and I do have a lot of thoughts. So I'm just gonna get going and then as people join, I will read comments and we can sort of discuss more in depth. But let me just give you some of my initial thoughts to start out with. What's up, Lex? Lex says it was great. I agree. So for a series that was made by men, and I do think it's made for men. Obviously, women are going to be probably the only ones that are going to watch it. And that's unfortunate. But it was made by men for men. And really my only criticism of it is how much of a footnote. Well, before we get into that, Birdie Marie says your sweater. Thank you so much. My friend Carly actually makes these. And when I put this up on YouTube, I'll definitely give y'all the link to her Etsy shop. Non-denominal, I will be putting this up on YouTube. So don't worry. You can still watch it later. And I'm not going to get too much into it. What's the movie about? Okay, so let me fill y'all in. So there's going to be some spoilers here, although I think they're pretty obvious right from the beginning. But basically, the show starts with police putting this little boy under arrest for suspicion of the murder of his classmate. His parents are obviously shocked. We're shocked as the audience because the child is super young and you know, you're kind of in your mind, you're like, this must be a mistake or something like that. But, you know, he has this moment right in the beginning where, like, when the police show up, he has, like, wet himself. So, like, we're definitely supposed to think that this is, by all means, a young child. He's not really, like, advanced above his age or anything like that. So I think that his family consists of, it's him, his mom, dad, and his sister, Lisa. And the boy's name is Jamie. And so Jamie's under arrest. His dad comes with him to the police station. They're like, you know, you can follow us or whatever. And that's kind of how the series starts out. It's a 4-episode series. With that being said, my only criticism probably of the entire series is, I think, also one of its strengths, but it is made by men, for men, and it's about men. And so the schmurder of this young girl basically ends up being just a footnote in the story. It's basically a plot device, right? Let me check the comments. Oh, Kara, thank you. Kara says your top looks so cute. My friend made this for me and she has an Etsy shop that I will link in the YouTube video of this. Thanks. Thank you for mentioning it. Hi, Black Pearl. It's good to see you. Yeah, funny, like Haha says, this show broke my heart. I am literally here just to trauma dump on y'all because I just finished watching it and I have nobody else to talk to about it. Would I recommend it for teens? Absolutely. B. Colborn says they missed an opportunity to highlight the beauty of female friendships. And that's why I say it's kind of like it is by men, about men, and for men. So just keep that in mind, you know, as we discuss. There is not going to be a lot of discussion or focus on women's issues here just because the show is not really about women's issues. It's about men's issues. You know what, y'all? Hang tight. Let me get a drink. I forgot to put my water bottle next to me. Hang tight. Just a sec. Okay, I'm back. All right, so to get into the discussion, basically, the show is not really about whether this boy actually murdered his classmate. It becomes really, really clear in the first episode that he did do it. And the rest of the 3 episodes are kind of there just to explain why. It's kind of there to set up the motive. So whether he did it is really not up for discussion. There's video evidence. His dad sees it. They, you know, it ends up being that they brought him in for a good reason. And so they're trying to figure out like who else had something to do with it, and like what there's controversy about the boy. I'm so sorry, I literally had to stop talking. Controversy about the boy, that's crazy. Tell me more in the comments if you can, because I haven't heard anything about that. Yeah, I literally just watched this and had to come on here and kind of just trauma dump about it, so that's what I'm doing. So the reasons why I really like the show is because one of the things that it really focuses on in a really strong and powerful way is how much of men's like development, how much of that adolescence period is actually just boys trying to be anything but feminine, like boys being denied their own humanity. So at the very end of the show, the dad kind of talks about, you know, he and the mom like have this moment where they're both sitting down and like reflecting on what happened. He says, you know, I put him in footy, didn't I? You know, I put him into sports, I put him into boxing, and basically he sucked. And I couldn't like, and all the other dads were like making fun of him, and I couldn't even look at him. Like he would look for me and I couldn't look at him. And in that same conversation, the dad also talks about how his dad would just, you know, beat up on him, and that was basically like his discipline, and he promised himself he wouldn't be that dad, right? But at the same time, we see throughout the show that the dad himself has anger issues, and the way that he sort of displays those is animalistic. Like he goes backwards from being like human and like normal and backs into this sort of more animalistic behavior where he fights, you know, the boy that tagged his car, and like where you know, even his own son talks about he knocked a shed loose or something. He knocked over a whole shed in the backyard when he was angry one time. And so the recurring theme of this is that anger is the only emotion that men are allowed to express. And when they get angry, that they resort to less than human behavior, and they are unable to talk to each other or lean on each other for emotional support. At the same time, though, men do idolize each other. They especially idolize their fathers and stuff like that. And so I feel like one of the biggest, sort of like most heartbreaking things that goes along with that, like, masculinity takes your humanity away from you theme, is that he kept saying, like Jamie kept saying, I didn't do it. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. And I think he means it when he says that. I think he really means it wasn't me. Because the real him is not that. That was the him that he constructed, right? That was the him that he felt like he had to be when his dad wouldn't be there, you know, ready to meet his gaze when he would fuck up on the football field or whatever, when he wasn't good at boxing or whatever. His dad was like ashamed of him and couldn't look at him or whatever. And all this boy wanted to do was like sit there and draw. And I don't know that like somebody, I don't know if I missed it, or maybe somebody like made fun of him at school about it, but for some reason he stopped, right? And yeah, I just love that the show really focuses on this theme that like so much of what being a man is just telling yourself no when you're about to feel an emotion or when you're about to be vulnerable with someone, right? And only telling yourself yes when you've been pushed to that point of animalistic anger, dominance, you know, conquest, etc. Because you find out that that's what everybody around you really values, you know, as far as boys go. And I do like that they alluded to a lot of the fact that like women are naturally sort of capped by society a little bit. Like women, there's like, I like that they didn't shy away from the fact that girls don't develop the same as boys, that girls don't really have the same sort of issues as boys. I do like that they didn't shy away from that. Okay, let me read the comments for a quick sec so I can refocus. If y'all don't like me talking about this, just leave the fucking chat. Like, I don't understand why you're here telling me you don't like it. Okay. So the controversy around the boy was like, when you think about knife crimes in Britain, this isn't who you picture doing it. I think that was part of the point. Yeah, Fahima says, I immediately noticed how the dad was so hesitant to show him affection and comfort in the jail cell. Absolutely. Right? So like, and he alludes to that at the end too. He says to his wife, like, you would have been much better. Like, you would have done a lot better at this than me. But it's like, your boy needed you. You know, you're sort of his like peer, you know, he sees his future in you. He clearly idolizes you. And I like that they didn't shy away from that either. So men often fall back on women and how women are really the emotional regulators of the family. That was very clear in episode 4. You know, when the dad sort of like loses his shit and like the girls kind of have to keep it together. Jessica says the series made me cry from beginning to end. Yeah, it's a rough one. I'm on episode 3. Is the rest worth watching? Yeah, I would say absolutely. Yeah, episode 3 is really hard to watch because of the interactions with the therapist. Yeah. Okay, so a lot of people just have been watching this, which I'm really, really happy about. So my next set of thoughts is sort of around the boy himself and like how the boys in the school sort of present and how he tries to fit into that, right? So yeah, we'll get to the therapist episode. So basically, like, I think they casted this boy for a good reason, right? He does look super young. He does look super innocent. Let me see if I can switch my background here because I made like kind of slides to go with it. Let me see. Yeah, so they kind of, so see like in this clip right here, in this slide, they really have him looking super childlike, super innocent, right? And anytime he's around men, he sort of reverts to this. And he almost is like looking for guidance, you know, from these men. Whenever he's around his dad, he sort of has this, again, like pitiful look on his face. Whenever he's around like the detectives, he has this sort of pitiful stance, right? And as the show progresses, like you get to see him around all these different people. And when he gets to be around the therapist, one of the therapists who's a woman, this is sort of what he starts doing. And he starts like, he goes back and forth between trying to like earn her pity and trying to intimidate her. And it's very clear that he only does this around the woman. He does not do this around his dad. He doesn't do this around the guards. He doesn't, you know, he sort of wants them to, he's like appealing to them, right? But with this woman, he is trying on his 2 different selves, his 2 different personalities. And I think it's his interactions with the therapist that make it the most clear that he definitely did what he did. That he definitely murdered this girl. It sort of takes it completely out of the realm of doubt that he was the one, that he really did do it. Because the way that he switches up around this poor therapist who has to really keep her composure throughout. She has to defer to like male authority, right, to get him back in line. So like whenever the guards come back in, or whenever she threatens him that the guards are gonna come back in, he reverts back to like little boy behavior, and he's like, fine, I'll sit down, you know, whatever. And yeah, he definitely makes her do a ton of emotional labor. Now, what's interesting is that in his conversations with the female therapist, he mentions his male therapist also. So he has 2 sort of like psychiatric evals going at the same time. They're occurring parallel to each other because she was brought in for a second opinion. And he says more than once something like, why are you asking me hard questions? The other guy doesn't ask me hard questions. You know, I can just give him easy answers. He just asks me like yes or no questions type thing. And he continues to get really, really agitated whenever she asks him to access his feelings, or whenever she asks him to sort of like dig deeper and like try and understand why he did what he did. But it's very clear that this boy is compartmentalizing certain parts of himself that he feels like need to be masculine, right? He feels like, you know, up to, I would probably say, this is how most men feel, that they at most can have like 10% feminine qualities, and they need to be like 90% or more to fit into this idea of quote unquote masculinity, which means that you're not self-aware, you're not very emotional, right? You don't cry, you don't like do anything girly like drawing or whatever, right? And that is because being a woman equals weakness, right? This is why he feels that at his, 13, 12 or whatever years old, he feels like he can try to stand up and like intimidate this grown-ass woman, right? Who is getting paid like 6 figures a year to do this job and who has like multiple male guards at her disposal. But that is why he feels like he can stand up to her and like buck up to her and stuff like that. It's because he feels he associates women with weakness. Now, why does he do that? Well, because we see in the boys' interactions, like at the school and stuff, we see that in a girl, so basically there was like another kid named Ryan involved in this at the school, and we see this scene where one of the girls, the murdered girl's best friend, attacks a boy because she thinks that he was the one that really did it because they haven't seen the videotape and stuff like that. And she just starts kind of wailing on him in the parking lot when they're all out there for a fire drill, and everybody starts making fun of him because a girl just beat him up. And so that scene is there on purpose, right? We only have 4 episodes to tell this story, right? 4 hours. And they're using every single scene. They're using every single scene to tell a story, right? So the overall perception of girls among Jamie's peer group is that they're weak and it's embarrassing if you get beat up by one, right? It completely makes sense of why he would have stabbed her, because in the video she pushes him and then he pushes her and then he stabs her. And so he's like, I'm not gonna get beat up by a girl. And so, yeah, they breed contempt for women. Somebody in the chat said, how was the boys acting in my opinion? Disturbingly good. He was very, very good. He's got a bright future ahead of him. But yeah, the show's really good. Okay, so that's kind of another tangent that I was thinking about, right? Is like, how was this like facade of his built? And it was built by all the men in his life. And it was built by, his dad and his peers. And they also like really, really brilliantly at the end there, his parents have a discussion about, should we have gotten him? Like he just all of a sudden he was like locking himself in his room and like just being on his computer and the light is still on at 1 a.m. And like, who knows, like what's he's watching there, like corn or whatever. And is basically this reference to like boys are easier to raise, boys are easier to deal with. And it's like, no, they're actually not, and in one of the ending scenes when they're talking about their daughter, who is, once again, they use one of the scenes to show her extreme emotional intelligence, right? So she knows her parents are like crying in their bedroom or whatever. Their house is small, right? You can hear everything. And so she hears her parents like crying and sort of talking in the bedroom, and she comes in, she's like, you guys okay? She knows they're not, but she's like, are you okay? She looks a little dressed up, and they're like, oh, is that new? Like they're trying to be nice to her. She's like, no, she steers the conversation. She's like, it's all about, I'm just wearing it different. I always tell you guys it's about combinations, like da-da-da. She lightens the mood, right? And they had been planning to go out to dinner, but she picks up obviously on their like sadness and heaviness, and she's like, you know what, can we just stay home, like, can we just get some takeout, whatever. And the relief is palpable, right? They're like, hey, yeah, let's just do that, we'll find popcorn somewhere else. And the parents find themselves asking like, how did we give birth to her and to him? Like, how is this possible? And it's like, the daughter's a little older, so she's like 16 or something. But I think it is like very clear that she's always been highly emotionally intelligent, and like you don't learn that stuff overnight when you turn 16, right? Like you maybe go through, right, your adolescence in a little bit of a different way, but I think once again, everything in the show was on purpose, right? Just showing how the girl is only a couple years older, and yet she has emotional intelligence like that is completely incomparable with her brother or her dad even, you know? And the mom is sort of the same way. Like, they make it very clear that she's very careful. She's walking around on eggshells around the dad, right? Because in the 4th episode, he like confronts the boy who tagged his work truck and his work van, and he confronts him physically, you know, he throws him to the ground, he throws his bike after him, you know, and all that. Like, he makes it very clear that he's not afraid to express his anger. Like, that's how he's gonna be, you know, dealing with his real life problems. And it kind of once again goes to show that like this is why boys turn out like this, because they see their fathers unable to cope emotionally with anything, right? Yeah, the mom was interesting too. She's clearly, you know, the backbone of the family. I think a big deal gets made out of like the dad working, but meanwhile she was working too, I'm pretty sure. She was like a full-time working mom. Thank you for saying my cardigan's beautiful. My friend made it, and I'll put a link to it once I put this up on YouTube, so that'll be in the description. The father was not just a bit toxic, he was toxic, right? So like you see him keeping it together most of the time, but you know, the only thing he really vowed to himself was that I'm not gonna be like my dad and just beat the shit out of my kids. But it's not like he was more comfortable actually expressing his emotions. It's not like he was actually there for his kid. No, he just didn't beat the shit out of him, right? And the boy did get to see him like push over a whole shed or whatever. Like, you know, he definitely, and he thought that was cool. He thought it was like funny, right? He definitely lost it at the hardware store, exactly. Yeah, Alice says, men don't even realize the patriarchy is also hurting them by castrating them emotionally. And that is a really good way to put it, because it really is. It's like there's parts of yourself that you as a man are not allowed to access. You're not allowed to display those things, because otherwise you're basically accepting your lot in life as a sissy or whatever, which actually means what? Woman. I talk about this a lot, the whole phenomenon of like boys will be boys. The hidden implication in that, the like inception level message in that is boys won't be girls. Boys won't be girls. They will be boys, and that's all they will be, right? Meanwhile, girls, it's like you got to do all the same shit as men, and you also have to be like nice. You're also like the emotional backbone of the family. You're the one that's supposed to know what to do. You're the one that's supposed to like be the emotional padding for all the men around you. Like, that is what it is, right? Can you imagine this little boy bucking up to his male therapist like that? No. You know, like he didn't buck up to the doctor. He didn't buck up to anyone but this woman. Why? Because he associates even a fully grown woman with weakness, with I can still intimidate her a little bit. And at the same time, it's also the acknowledgement that like women are the safe gender to like open up to and like splash out all of these emotions onto, right? Because if you do that with another man, he's gonna hit you. Like, he's gonna hit you. He's gonna get mad and he's gonna hit you. Now, the other thing about the show that was interesting was how much they focused on the girl like bullying him, quote unquote, but also like I like that they didn't shy away from the fact that first of all, not only girls are bullied as well, and like, so the whole storyline with Katie, the girl that he murdered, was that basically at first the detectives thought that they were like friends because they saw her like commenting certain things on his Instagram and it looked like hearts, you know, just emojis or whatever, so they assumed that it was like nice stuff. And then they later come to find out that it's actually was her way of like calling him an incel or whatever. And he did not want to be known as an incel, obviously, because that's like that means your life is like over or whatever. And now at the same time, parallel to all of this happening, Brandon, I'm sorry, it's for some reason it's not showing your comments. I'll go back and read them. Yeah, so Brandon says, I think that's changed with kids raised with the internet. Nobody can hit you through a screen. Yes, but they can like bully you, right? So that's what the show was about. So like his peers were not hitting him, but the fear was, I'm going to get bullied. I'm going to be viewed as an incel. I'm going to be viewed as someone that can't get girls, quote unquote, right? And so basically the story with this girl, Katie, was that she had sent like a naked or topless Snapchat to one of the boys in the class, and he spread it around the whole school. And so she, at the same time, was being very much bullied herself. She was being basically sexually harassed at school because everyone had seen this picture of her topless, and she was just supposed to deal with that, right? She was supposed to just be okay with that. And even Jamie's reaction to that situation was that, well, now he's not going to be getting any nudes from anybody else, will he? Because he kind of blew it. His biggest concern was, we're not going to get to see all the other girls naked. Right? We only got to see this, and he called her flat-chested too. We only got to see this flat-chested girl's chest. And that was disappointing. He even says she's not really my type or whatever. So he definitely has already this underlying misogyny, right? He's not feeling bad for this girl for being bullied and for being sexually harassed at school. Not to mention, he tried to hit on her, perceiving her as weak because of this whole like picture circulating, you know, around her, whatever. This picture of her circulating around, he thought that she was going to be weaker and easier to sort of get because she was sort of down and hurt from that and vulnerable from that. And he was like trying to swoop in. And the way that she responded to that was basically by going into his Instagram comments and calling him an incel. And what he did in response to that was stalk her around like downtown, and then basically stab her in a parking lot to her unaliving. And so the two responses were very disparate, right? And yeah, the fact that he thought it was clever. Yeah, he was like, yeah, pretty clever, isn't it? That I was gonna like swoop in, you know, because obviously like the popular boys, like quote unquote, don't want her. Like he was basically like, oh, I was gonna take the nice guy route. You know? Well, Renbird, thank you so much. Renbird says, I just watched your YouTube episode of White Lotus. Yeah, White Lotus is brilliant. Mike White makes me so proud to be a Cancer son. Like, that man is fucking brilliant. So yeah, going back to the storyline with Katie and why he ultimately like unalived her is because he couldn't have her making him look a certain way, right? So from this boy's perspective, he has failed at football, right? He has failed at boxing, right? All the sporty stuff that his dad like sort of took him into, he failed. He doesn't like to watch sports. His dad loves to watch any sport. The only time that he and his dad seemingly ever connect is about things that his dad likes. Like his dad is not willing to, yeah, he's smaller than the other boys. And I don't know why his dad thought he wouldn't be. His dad himself is a short little guy. He's not, you know what I mean? And not that you can't be good at sports when you're short and stuff like that, but it's like you have to be aware that like when you have a child, your child is not like, your child's gonna look like you. They're gonna have your genetics, you know, unless your wife has some really strong, you know, genetics or whatever. But yeah, he was expecting his boy to be like the same as him and like really excel in sports and etc. But instead he got he's good at art gene, right? Watermelons, thank you so much. My friend Carly makes these, and when I put this up on YouTube, I'll give y'all a link to her Etsy shop. I don't remember right now what it's called. Yeah, and so basically he thought he was going to talk to her and like threaten her, right? And basically get her to stop doing what she's doing. So he borrows a knife from his friend and he basically stalks this girl around until he can sort of corner her and it seems like, you know, they sort of get into it, you know, and he's like, probably like, stop embarrassing me, stop commenting on my things, you know, etc. And she probably says, like, what are you doing? Get away from me. She pushes him, and then he pushes her. And I think the reason that he ends up stabbing her is because he's afraid of surviving that, right? So girls at that age, so mind you, not only is he smaller than the other boys, but girls at that age tend to actually be a little bit bigger. They develop faster than the boys. And so he knew she could probably take him on. Like, he knew she could probably beat his ass, and then they would both come back to school, and the whole his entire school reputation would be, he is gonna get beat up by a girl, right? And then also Layla, right here, you said it so perfectly. Layla says it hurt his ego more that this girl he considered devalued and already inferior rejected him. Wow. Yeah, like that really sums it up, right? Not only was she devalued and everything, she wasn't even quote unquote his type, right? So there's no way for him to spin it like it was, you know. Thanks, y'all. Thank you. Yeah, Maciel says he got rejected, so he acted out of anger by taking her out. See it on the news all the time. Yeah, exactly. So boys have this like mindset instilled in them early on that like shame is bad, right? You should never be ashamed, and nobody should ever be ashamed of you. So that was like one theme that this boy kept coming back to, was like, my dad was ashamed of me. And then the female therapist asked him, how did that make you feel? And he said, you were supposed to say he's not ashamed of me. And then his dad in the final episode confirms it. Like, there's like this bookend moment where he says, I was ashamed to look at him because all the other dads were making fun of him because he couldn't play sports like a girl. Yes, Maru, catch me on YouTube for sure. Thank you, babe. Yeah, this is that same storyline many women deal with in the workplace. And I'm really, really glad, men and honor, yes. So I'm really, really glad that we've been sort of shining a light on this. If you want a female perspective of this, the movie Fair Play has basically a very similar storyline. Huge trigger warning for SA in that one. But yeah, that was a really good exploration of it from the woman's side, right? Where, you know, she and her man were sort of equal at work, and then and they both thought he was going to be promoted first, and so they were both really happy about it, etc. And then she gets the promotion, like unexpectedly, and he just can't deal with it. That it unravels, like completely unravels him to the point where he like assaults her, and she has to basically stab him to get him to stop. Anyways, yeah, so there's been this exploration of like men and honor and themes of like shame and themes of resentment towards women, right? Because I just keep coming back to this thought that Jamie kept saying, like, that wasn't me. It wasn't me. The movie again was Fair Play, and it's on Netflix. If anyone can like just type it in the comments, that'd be awesome. Yeah, so I keep coming back to this thought that like this boy kept saying like, that wasn't me. It wasn't me. And I really do think that he means that, because I think that he has a real me, quote unquote, and then he has the me of himself that he is constructing. So he talks about this with like the Instagram, right? It's like, well, everybody else has it, right? And like, it feels like he has to have it. It feels like he has to post on it. You know, it feels like he has this sort of obligation, right? And he's trying to construct this image of himself that he feels like is acceptable to his peers, right? And at the same time, his parents as well, but more specifically his dad. So he definitely, even though his dad is like not a quote unquote bad guy at all, you know, I don't want anyone to have that takeaway. His dad definitely has like toxic masculinity tendencies and stuff. But his dad is actually a lot more like emotionally mature and like well composed than a lot of other dads. He's just checked out. and he works from morning till night. And so he doesn't have a lot of time to spend with his son or invest in his son. And really the biggest takeaway is that, right, so Caledonia says he wanted acceptance, just not from a girl, despite wanting girls to want him, to make him feel accepted. So yes, this is where I think what they captured well in this series is how men use anger and schmecks in order to build their identities. Those are basically the two building blocks of a male's identity: schmecks and anger. And these things go by like other names, right? There's like lust, power, right? Dominance. It's different flavors of the same thing. Right? So Brandon says, dad's not a bad guy, but he assaulted a kid who vandalized his car. So I think that scene, what that really illustrates is that the only way to really fight toxic masculinity is with toxic masculinity. And it sucks. It sucks for the men, right? Because what is he gonna do with this toxic ass kid? So the kid is toxic because he thinks it's funny to like run around and terrorize the family. Like the kid has no empathy, right? Because otherwise, why would he go painting like profanities on the van of a father who's just had to commit his son to probably a life sentence in prison, right? Just absolutely no empathy. And not only that, but he was being even more toxic by stalking this dude to the fucking, he was gonna embarrass him more, like in front of his family or whatever, right? And so the only way for the dad to like really stop him was gonna be to like kind of beat his ass, Yeah, all the male kids but Adam were terrible. And yeah, I mean, Adam's probably terrible in other ways, I don't know, but yeah, he was triggered by the guy in the paint store for sure. Because the guy in the paint, thank you for bringing him up, because the guy in the paint store was another really good example of what toxic masculinity does to men. Because the guy in the paint store was basically telling him, he's like, oh my gosh, like I recognize you. Like I just watched, I've been keeping up with the case, and like, just so you know, you should get the kid a better lawyer. You should fight that. And he starts listing these crazy online conspiracies and theories that have been like circulating in regards to this case, saying like, yeah, like the bullet, the stab wounds like didn't go to the bone or something like that, or they went into the bone, and like you need to get him a better lawyer. And just so you know, you could crowdfund his defense, and like a lot of us would pay for that. A lot of us would like do this. And the kid was obviously also kind of an incel type, like clearly not like really great social skills, right? And so it just kind of goes to showing like the dad is like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like I saw my kid do this on, like you can tell that's what's going through his head, and he realizes that it goes so much deeper, right? And yes, oh my god, yes, Liz says paint store guy mentions I saw her pictures, meaning probably the one that was shared among the kids. Yeah, and I mean that they probably went and like demonized her, right? Like, oh, this little slut or whatever, and like now this innocent young man is in jail because she was bullying him, etc. Like, I just know that they made up, all of this stuff. Ellen says the dad could stop himself from assaulting. Jamie couldn't. He just had 40 years practice at stopping. Yeah, for sure. I just mean that like his dad was there with his wife and his young daughter. And this kid, the same kid that he knows spray painted his van, stalked them over there. So he had no idea what this kid was gonna do. And he knows, like, he's obviously in a heightened state of awareness of how scary and unhinged these young boys can be. His 13-year-old son just stabbed somebody out of anger, right? So he's like, what is going on? You know what I mean? And then also in the last episode, like pertaining to that, you get to hear that the dad's experience in school was like, kind of similar, but it wasn't, because he and the mom were like together all through school. And so even though he had this embarrassing moment at school or whatever, he got a girlfriend out of it, right? And so he was okay. He had this woman by his side basically his whole life to absorb, and sort of give him credibility that like, well, at least a girl likes him or something like that. And his young son is going through something completely different. And so it's just very interesting that like, I think everything in the series was really, really, really purposeful, and it kind of illustrates that, like, it just takes one wrong track of, like, you know, you split your pants and you hit your nose and everybody laughs at you, but it's okay because then when you go home at the end of the night, a girl snogs your face off or whatever, like makes out with you or whatever. And Jamie clearly hasn't like had that. It's also the fact that he like even tried to like gain credibility with the therapist by saying like, oh yeah, some girls from my class have shown me their boobs. And then it turns out that no, he just saw a picture that was being passed around of the same girl that he ended up murdering. Crazy work, crazy work. Yeah, the fact that the dad was the one seeing the knife video was so interesting. Accountability, exactly. And he wished that he could go back and have the mom see it instead, because then he could live in like this plausible denial of like, no, I don't believe it. That couldn't have been my son, etc. Like, no, he had to be there and like look his little boy in the eyes. Yeah, that show was really good. Jamie didn't respect his mom and sister. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You don't know why they made it seem like he wasn't into the red pill culture. I think he very much was. I think that is what they're trying to tell you. But they're saying that it doesn't matter like how into it or not into it you are, it affects you regardless. Because if you can't get girls, right, or if you can't be the tough guy or something like that, then you are worthless. Like you have no ground to stand on, right? He has more understand this, he has more credibility with men now than before he murdered this girl. He has more credibility with men that are older than him. He has support groups online that are willing to raise funds for his defense. And he knows he did it, right? So yeah, he's obviously lying. He also accuses the therapist of doing those like red pill things, right? He's like, oh, this is you just trying to make me look weak or whatever, right? He freaks out on her because he does believe that red pill stuff. And it's also the fact that a lot of these boys don't know that what they're believing is red pill, right? A lot of the stuff just comes from their peers and they just accept it as, you know, normal. And all of those men will still say they're not being emotional. Yeah, exactly. They have this idea in their heads that like, that wasn't me. That wasn't me. He has, and I think the frustrating part for men is that it's like, but this is the me that you all want me to be, right? The me that you all want me to be is the one that is good at sports, doesn't cry, is strong, is manly, etc., right? And I want to be the other me. I want to be the me that sits there for hours and draws at the table. I want for it to be okay for me to not like sports, even if my dad likes sports. I don't want it to be embarrassing or shameful to my dad when I'm not good at sports. I want him to be proud of my art. I want him to be proud of like what I'm doing, you know, instead of sports. And, you know, his parents seem to have really dismissed his love for art. You know, his parents didn't pay much attention to that. They sort of like very dismissively mentioned it, right? They were like, yeah, he would just sit there for hours at the table and draw, and then he just stopped. You know, and then him trying to connect with his peers by getting a computer, by going on Instagram, and he just gets bullied there because he's not this stereotypical Chad or whatever. And he's like, oh, you want a Chad? I'll show you a Chad, right? And Celia says, yeah, Jamie kept saying he did nothing wrong. He had no remorse for what he did. And yeah, that's because to him, there's these things called honor killings, and that's what this was. This was an honor killing. A woman shamed him, so he killed her. Right? This is actually just a very common thing that happens in other cultures. Like, sorry, but it is what it is. Yeah, his friend giving him the knife, saying, oh, he was just supposed to threaten her with it. Like, that was okay? Like, that would have been okay? Crazy. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And you really, it's so hard to make content like this for men because they will take the part where she, quote unquote, bullied him and run with it. And it's like, no, the writers of the show, by the way, wanted you to know that she was bullied at the same time. She sent a topless photo to somebody she thought she could trust, and he spread it all around the school, and she was being bullied. She was being bullied, and this kid was trying to swoop in on her like she's stupid and like she doesn't see what he's doing, right? And he was like, oh no, I thought it was pretty clever, right? That she would be weak and I would just swoop in on her and like she would have to say yes to me because I'm the nice guy. And she didn't. It turns out she was like, I'm not that desperate. And that was the thing he had to unalive her for. That right there. Even though, once again, she's not his type, he wasn't even interested in her. He once again saw her as weak, vulnerable, and devalued. Didn't matter. She could have still embarrassed him in front of the whole school, and he wasn't going to have that. And then, yeah, I think somebody made a good point in the chat. They said, seemed like he was trying to flirt with the therapist, like someone he could conquer in her head. Exactly. He kept doing this like little switch between this innocent act and this very like almost, I don't know, American Psycho, like you think you're this and like you think you're gonna get this out of me, like whatever. Yeah, he really felt more intelligent than all women. Exactly. Yeah, so Caledonia says, but they're afraid to be authentic. Ironic since Red Pill claims being a man is being brave. Exactly. Being brave would mean that you can take societal feedback about yourself and not be like so ashamed that you gotta, you know, unalive somebody about it. Like, that's crazy. They always need outward validation. Absolutely. Ali says, I wish they hadn't framed it as bullying. So many men are using this as an excuse for his behavior. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there's also this, I don't even know if I want to open this can of worms because I gotta go soon, but there is a can of worms to be opened about the fact that when he got onto Instagram, he was able to start following a bunch of models that were posing, you know, almost naked, etc. There's something about SW being so unregulated and so easily and readily and freely available. Do you know what I mean? Like, because I even think that like those Instagram almost nudie models, like that's SW. I'm sorry, that's SW. You are essentially like selling your body, you're profiting off your body, right? And yeah, he had no parental controls on those contents. Yeah, because your parents assume Instagram is going to show you age appropriate things, and it's not, because that wouldn't keep children on Instagram. What keeps children on Instagram is being able to access like taboo schmexual content, and you know, your parents just think you're on Instagram, right? Or your parents went and got you a computer, you have high-speed internet. I'm telling y'all, like, I was raised before this, right? I turned 18 before high-speed internet was probably even a thing. And so I was not growing up with boys who had access to high-speed internet corn at the age of like 8 to 12. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, you're married? Like, yeah, but I would never tell any of y'all to get married now, because 99% of men out here are addicted to corn. And like, I can't believe we have to share the fucking planet with them. It's very, very frustrating. So yeah, children are exposed to insane shit on the internet that parents are not aware of. And it's like, if your child has a computer in their room, chances are you're sleeping, you know, and like, adolescent like sleep schedules are all over the place, their hormones are all over the place, so of course they're gonna get, you know, worked up in their room at night or whatever. They can't sleep. What are they gonna do? They're gonna go on the internet and find something to goon off to, you know? How are these parents not aware? Because you don't want to think of your 8-year-old boy sitting there pen in hand watching grown men and women have schmecks on the internet. The biggest takeaway from this series is don't have children. Honestly, that's the biggest takeaway from the series. Don't have children. Most people are not fit emotionally to raise children. The parents were at work all the time, and that's why their little boy was suffering. They should not have been having children. That's all I'm gonna tell you, you know? Girls, it's one thing, right? With girls, the world will raise them, etc. Yeah, don't have boys, because I'm telling you, it's no way for you to... There's no way. You could raise a social outcast of a child, never send them to school, never let them be around their peers. Allie, thank you so much for coming back to this. Jamie didn't attack the boys bullying him, only Katie saw. I was going to make this point too. The boys were all bullying each other too. And that was, once again, they made sure to show that for a reason. So don't skip over that, especially any men watching this. Don't skip over that, because the boys were bullying each other too, but Jamie never thought it would be appropriate to stab one of them. He only did that to the girl who dared to stand up for herself in his Instagram comments, because she was like, oh, you're trying to play it that like I'm stupid. And the only other person that could see how Jamie wasn't just a quote unquote good kid, was her best friend. Her best friend was the only one that saw through his sort of incel-like behavior. So, yeah. And they did not, you know, at that point, she knew nobody was going to listen to her. Yeah, and a lot of the parents who do control what their sons consume are hyper-religious, which is just misogyny in a different way. So they're still being raised to be misogynistic. It's not like it's any better. Kids shouldn't be allowed to have social media. Yeah, I mean, I just think people shouldn't be allowed to have kids at this point. Warm take. I think we cannot protect the children, so we just shouldn't have them. I swear to God. The problem is that corn has seeped into all young places, Discord, even on Roblox games. Yeah, absolutely. And it's like Adolescence, like the reason the show is named Adolescence is because that's when boys reach sort of their the point of their real schmexual development. And I think the movie did a really great job of showing how boys fall straight through the cracks because the detective's own son, right, was someone that he didn't get along with. Like the detective himself, the detective like investigating the fucking case was like having trouble connecting with his own son and was like, oh, I won't bother you when I'm at your school. Like, brother, like, what are we gonna do? You know, like, I feel like one of the things the series did really well was show how men are useless in this scenario. Men are useless. The only person that really got through to this boy was the female therapist that he also like tried to intimidate and assault, etc. So that's the real message here, is that men don't care about each other's, you know, loneliness epidemic or anger mismanagement or anything like that. Yeah, males fear one another and count on women to protect them from other males. Exactly. Yeah. Anyways, with that, I gotta go. Yeah, they're supposed to learn to control their impulses, but they're not being taught anymore. Yeah, that's another thing worth having a discussion on because, again, Jamie mentions that he didn't really see his dad control himself. He didn't see his dad control his impulses. He saw his dad actually kind of feed into that. And like, he said, my dad yells and like he knocked over a shed and all of that. Another crazy point, he had friends who enabled him. Yeah, absolutely. His friends absolutely enabled him. The most horrifying thing to witness is when a sweet boy turns into the monsters among us. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, masculinity really, really is toxic. So we really have to contend against it. And I think the most important thing that the series did was take that responsibility off of women. And we know men are not going to watch it. That's what sucks. We know men are still not going to watch it. And if they do, they're going to take, you know, they're going to take the wrong message away from it, that women are still the evil ones in this scenario. It is what it is. But they really did take the responsibilities off of women. Thank you so much for saying that this is a good live and that it's making you want to watch the show. You should watch the show. It is hard. It's a hard watch. It's heartbreaking, but it's a good watch. And I hope that it inspires y'all to not have children. That's really what I gotta say. What are you drawing? I'm gonna post this on YouTube. I'm gonna go back and edit it and like post it in the next few days because so many people have been asking. So go watch it and then come back and watch this again. Yeah. Hey public, I'm about to hop off of here, but I really cannot wait for your take on this. Public says, as a parent, I was very concerned. Yeah, I can't wait for you to make some videos about this. I will be watching and reposting because I know you're going to have some good takeaways. I'm going to post this live on YouTube as well so that people can like watch it back. But yeah, I think moral of the story is men are in trouble and it's the men that don't know it. Everybody else knows it except for the men, and the systems are set up to fail the men. Around every turn, right? The other dads, his own dad, the institution of school, right? All the teachers are overworked, underpaid. They have no idea what they're doing. Most of them are just skating by on their ass. And that's really, we can't blame them because they get paid absolutely nothing. And they have to take responsibility for other people's children and their behavior. And those children are disruptive and, you know, toxic. And even if you have a good dad, there's no guarantee that any of the other kids have a good dad, right? So all of it tends to go out the window once they start school. So, all right, stay safe out there, y'all. Love you.